Hello, friends, and welcome once again to Concert Conversations, a whole new season, a whole new program of amazing works. And thanks to Chris Connolly and Wells Fargo Advisors, we get to share a few minutes of time before every one of these concerts with Maestro Mark Russell Smith, who's joining us now. Thank you for joining us, Maestro.
A pleasure as always.
All right. Well, this is going to be an exciting program, and you've decided to start it off in an exciting way with an overture, not just any overture, but I believe, overture to Eugene Onegin from Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, actually, technically not an overture. It's part of the opera.
Sorry.
Right. This is the Polonaise. There's a big dance and court scene where this Polonaise plays a big role. So it's for kind of royal sounding, plush, beautiful, dynamic orchestra, but with the Polonaise, that kind of the swaggy rhythm that comes with that. So it's colorful and it's bright and it's upbeat and it's short, which is the key here.
Well, clearly I was just excited by the overture to a new Masterworks season. We'll get into it in its totality a little bit later. But what is it about this particular work and this particular composer that sets a stage for an exciting concert and a very exciting season?
Well, because it's immediately bubbles with life. I mean, it's immediate. It's a dance, right? And so there's just like energy from the outset. And so, to start a season, we have, of course, two big works. We have the Grieg Piano Concerto and we have Brahms Symphony No. 2. So and frankly, that's almost long enough for a full program. But to come out starting with a concerto as brilliantly as the Grieg begins, I just thought we needed something just to, because it is an exciting time. The orchestra's back, everybody's wearing gowns and tuxedos for the one time for the year, and and the audience everybody's back, and so there is some electricity in the air. And so this, of many of the pieces I know, I mean, this is really one of the great ones that is just like brief and short and just bursting with energy.
And not only are we welcoming back you and the Quad City Symphony Orchestra and getting back into community with all of our QCSO friends, we're welcoming back a favorite artist whom you've attracted to bring back yet again.
Yes, Wei Luo is coming back. We know her from when she was 18 years old and playing the Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto, and then 2 or 3 years later playing the Prokofiev Second Piano Concerto. I mean, a virtuoso, a powerhouse, a small person, not a big person, but like the sound that she gets from the piano and the richness and just the amazing virtuosity is very, very audience friendly. I mean, she's an audience favorite. People love her. She's very, understated kind of in her way. Like, it's not a big show off, but just sits down and just delivers amazing musical ideas.
Well, help us please remember how it is you came to be acquainted with each other and how we've managed to parlay that acquaintance into this wonderful relationship.
Well, it's through my school, the alma mater, the Curtis Institute of Music. The former president of Curtis was Gary Graffman, who actually soloed with the Quad City Symphony years and years ago. A famous pianist in his own right, and then became a wonderful teacher and was president of the school when I was a student there, 1,000 years ago. Basically, he teaches the superstar pianists that come through Curtis. And so really, I knew I wanted to do Rachmaninoff Third Concerto, and I knew we couldn't afford long, So I called Gary Graffman and say, well, who do you have? What do you have as a current student, a recently former student? And so, I mean, he said, I have this amazing student who's better than Long. I mean, don't quote me on that. Well, I mean, he said it. What can I say? And he's passed away now, so that we can't have any verification.
All right.
I mean, he's better than Long. And so, I watched a couple of videos, and of course, it's really, I trust his word to the nth degree. And so hired Wei Luo to come out. And I remember the first rehearsal, she comes out wearing like a Hello Kitty, like literally like a pink tracksuit, Hello Kitty tracksuit, and she's 18 years old, and comes out and and then just sits down and starts playing Rachmaninoff Third Concerto. She comes out like looking like a little kid, and then like turns into this ferocious virtuoso, and the orchestra was just like, you know, like jaw-dropping virtuosity and sound, and like she was just absolutely, you know, absolutely the real deal, you know. So
Well, we're very excited to have her back, but tell us a little bit more about Edvard Grieg's Piano Concerto and why it has earned its place in the pantheon of great piano works.
well, I mean, it's a virtuoso piece without question. It's, you know, it takes big time technique, you know, to pull it off, but it also has the kind of, you know, innocence and playfulness and tunefulness and folk element. You know, it's not, it's a very approachable piece. You know, they're hummable tunes. Just the aesthetic is so like comfortable is really not a great word. Is so, I think, well, comforting maybe, or just not. It's there's nothing, you know, to put you off, to put an audience member off. There's, you know, it's virtuosity that is also very pleasing. And so the tunes themselves are hummable. You know, again, the folk element, the dance-like elements. You know, it's well known, frankly. I mean, it really had its heyday kind of in the 40s and 50s with recordings coming out, and it was very well known. And then it fell out of favor a bit and wasn't played much. But it's kind of having a renaissance. And so when Wei Luo came and last time played the Prokofiev, it's like, well, you know, what's our next project? You know, and that's when you have someone who's now become an audience favorite and who's just developing as an artist. You know, you look for projects. And so basically, you know, at the Afterglow in the Black Hawk, we said, so what's our next thing? And she was like, Grieg, what about Grieg? And I said, yeah. So, you know, a little, you know, at that point we didn't say what's going to be opening night of October 2025, but you think, you know, you put it on the list and you kind of see where everything shakes out. And so as far as an opening night piece, I mean, it's fantastic because it's well known and hummable tunes and you know, incredible virtuosity. So it is a perfect opening night piece, actually.
Well, that is an important caution then, because we always love for our guests on Saturday nights at the Adler Theater to head over afterwards for the Afterglow. But I think the caution here is, if you happen to see Maestro in close conversation with the soloist, don't interrupt, because it might be a future program.
It's really true. I mean, a lot of stuff gets done because everybody finally, you know, you can relax after all the preparation and everything, and then you can start, you know, start dreaming a bit.
I always find it fascinating, the amazing people that you've gotten to work with. Do you have any other memorable performances of Grieg with other folks? Because I think that this is the first time that you two have worked together on this piece.
Correct. You know, I'd have to go back and look.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just wondering if.
I mean, I actually think the last time in quad was with a student concerto solo winner, who did the first movement, if I'm recalling correctly. But you know, I'm so old and I've done so many things, you know, done it so many times. It's hard to remember, but yeah. So I've had memorable performances. I just can't remember them right now. So.
Well, you're doing fine. All right. Well, I wanted to also make sure that we talked a little bit about Johannes Brahms Symphony No. 2. I mean, as you already indicated, I think most audiences would be more than satisfied with the ticket price just getting to hear the Grieg. But we're also getting, after the intermission, to hear Brahms Symphony No. 2.
Right.
And so how did that get selected for this first work in the Masterworks series?
Well, you know, I mean, as the curator for the Quad City Symphony audience, you know, there are certain pieces, just like if you're a curator of an art museum, you know, well, you know, we need Rembrandt or we need Da Vinci, we need, you know, there's certain artists that are just so important in the scope of things and in the history of things that, you know, we need to hear their works on a cyclical basis. And so, you know, we don't have Brahms every year, just as we almost have Beethoven every year. It's a rare year where we don't have Beethoven, but you know, there are so many important symphonists, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Bruckner, Mahler, of course, you know, and so you kind of, Haydn, Mozart, we kind of cycle through the big works, especially the big romantic works. And it's just been a while for Brahms' Second Symphony. It was time for a Brahms symphony, I think. I don't know when the last one was, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But it's time for a Brahms symphony because, again, it's as I am curator for the quad audience and for the orchestra, it's important that we hear these things. And so it's time for Brahms II. And it, of all the symphonies, is the most celebratory of all Brahms symphonies, is the most celebratory, most lyrical, the most, I think, directly approachable. And it has a great, fantastic ending, which all Brahms symphonies don't. Some do, but some don't. And so it was time for Brahms II, and so put it on the docket.
You've talked about that before, that this seems to be his most optimistic and upward-looking work in the symphonic realm.
Right.
Why do you think that is? Do we know something about this time in his life? Because he never really had a hugely satisfying romantic existence in his, a relationship in his life. What was it about this period for him?
Well, I think it's a matter of comfort with the idea of writing a symphony. I mean, it took him a long time. The first symphony was a long time coming. I mean, he was over 40 years old when he wrote Symphony No. 1. And because he had kind of fear and trepidation about following in Beethoven's footsteps, he wrote stuff for orchestra, but they were called serenades. They were he didn't want it to be called the symphony because there was such, there's a lot of baggage with that, for a German composer who's following Beethoven. And so once he got over the hurdle of the first symphony, I think the second it just poured out. And so it's not labored at all. I mean, the first symphony is C minor and tragic and intense, and it ends in glory. It ends in C major, and it's fantastic. And kind of that transition from C minor to C major is the story that it tells. But Brahms II, again, like he now kind of he got over that hurdle, and so things just seem to flow really organically, and so the melodies just kind of pour out. It doesn't start big; it starts kind of softly and kind of winds its way up, and it's super lyrical. It's beautifully colored. The woodwind, just the woodwind and horn writing and the string writing. I mean, D major is a great key for strings, especially because you have open strings and the kind of resonance that key kind of creates. And so I think the fact that he was over the hurdle of the first one and had struggled mightily to get that done, now it just poured forth in a really natural way. And you hear that and you sense that, I think.
One of the things I've always been captivated about by Brahms is that for a person of his day and his large connection to German-speaking Europe, he was in many ways quite cosmopolitan. He grew up in Hamburg in the north, and a port, very international city, and then made a large part of the most important part of his career in probably the cultural capital of Europe at that time, Vienna. But those are
Right.
two very different vibes. Each has an ethos, and many parts of Germany have different ones, but that he straddles all of that, and I think it just kind of comes through in his music.
Well, I agree. One incredibly cool thing about this symphony is it is so tightly constructed. I mean, he has a very German, the cliche German, the sense of organization and how things work, and certainly followed the footsteps of Beethoven as far as how Beethoven created things. You think of the Fifth Symphony with da 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 dum, and how you use little cells of music to create bigger paragraphs. And so Brahms had both worlds. I mean, he had that lyricism, but it's so tightly constructed. I mean, with this beautiful melody on top, we have an accompaniment, but that's related to this, and everything's related to everything else. And so from a nerdy musical standpoint, it's a fantastic score to sit down and analyze. And it's kind of awe-inspiring because you see how tightly it's constructed and how everything's related to everything else, but it doesn't sound scientific at all. It sounds very spontaneous and very flowing. And so he's kind of mastered both worlds. I mean, he's mastered kind of the rigor of putting something together in a very rigorous structural way, but also having the kind of openness and expansiveness that lyricism and I don't know, is that Viennese? I don't know, but it's certainly a composer who is using the methods of classicism, but also has that romantic spirit, sound-wise and ethos-wise.
Well, I'm grateful that we get a chance to hear both of those works. And before we delve too much further into this one, I just am very grateful that this season has come together the way that it has. We're going to be hearing, oh my goodness, saxophone music, poetry. We're going to be hearing so many different things coming together during the course of the season. You mentioned this before, that you're a curator. How does that role come into play when you're mapping out a season? Which, of course, we should note, you did this mapping out quite some time ago.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's again, I think it's recognizing that you are a curator and that we have 6 concerts, and that's not, there's so much repertoire that, 6 concerts is just, a dabble. You're just dabbling. You're dabbling in, major works, and nobody feels like at the end of an evening that you've dabbled. But the point is, there's so much from which to choose. And so it's really about where your priorities are, and how to introduce new things, how to keep the tried and true things, there are many agendas. We need piano soloists because audiences like that, and because there's such great repertoire. We need string soloists. We need the occasional non-string soloist, saxophone, for example. We need to hear huge symphonies. We need to hear classical works. We need to hear Baroque music. We need to hear music from American composers, from underrepresented composers. There are many agenda here, and that makes it fun and great. And what I love to do, as you know, is create programs of the kind of on one theme, and then have all sorts of different perspectives on that, from new, from old, if possible, to have a new poem, an old poem, a romantic poem, whatever, Shakespeare from 5 different perspectives, or so I'm curating on many levels simultaneously. First and foremost is creating balance of the season. We shouldn't even talk about, what's affordable. We can't obviously have gigantic symphonies, 6 times a year. And so there's the kind of logistical and economic realities of it, and which plays a role without doubt. And so I'm being a responsible curator of the organization also. So it's a lot of agendas that you have to balance. And do I get it perfectly right? I don't know. People seem to like the programming, but there's always something I'm leaving out. There's so much that I have to leave out of things that I want to do. So I'm very happy that it's a multi-year thing, that I can, if we don't do it this year, then we can put it on the list for next year and see what happens there. And, yeah. So, and things come up, spontaneously, with commissions or with co-commissions, or with an artist being available that we really want to have. And so, we're always nimble, but we also have to have kind of a grand plan in place.
And I don't want to give away too much, but this season, not only are we going to be hearing some very new works, including in Masterworks II, but later in the season, we're going to hear a piece that our audiences can claim at least partial credit for commissioning, right? That's going to be exciting.
Yes. Angel Lam, whose music we played last year, we're premiering a piece of hers, which actually be with dance, with traditional Chinese dancers. So it'll be, you never know. As I like to say, you never know what you're going to get when you come to the Quad City Symphony concert, but you're going to like it, and you're going to be enriched, and there's always something different. And that's the point. If there were this opening night, in a way, is kind of the most conventional. It's, concerto,
Mm-hmm.
Overture, quote unquote, mm-hmm. Overture, concerto, symphony, which is like kind of the old tried and true formula. But I don't think there are other programs, probably, as I'm thinking. None of the other programs are like that. And so we're extremely traditional because of the unique circumstances, and then we're not in other situations. And so, you never know what you're going to get, as Forrest Gump would say.
I don't want to give away too much, but it happens that I give away a little bit. In getting ready for the Angel Lamb, friends, if you get a chance to read this book, The Ultimate Journey by Richard Bernstein. We'll talk about it later, right here on Concert Conversations, but I'm just giving you a heads up for your reading assignment. If you get a chance to get this book, by all means, read it, and it'll mean even more later in the season. But we're almost out of time, Maestro. Anything else on this concert that you would like to talk about?
There's this is the concert you sit down and enjoy. Well, hopefully
Yeah.
all the concerts are ones that you sit down and enjoy.
Well,
But
they are.
this is the one. This is, you know, romantic, high romantic music. It's all romantic music. There's, you know, we're not pretending. Well, I mean, yeah, it's balanced between, I guess, Russia and Scandinavia and Germany. But
Well,
you know,
yeah.
right.
But I do want to encourage everyone who gets a chance to eavesdrop on this conversation to please come, because Maestro, you know, in last month, our community suffered a terrific loss. A wonderful longtime member of the orchestra very unexpectedly passed away, Elizabeth Gosma, great educator, phenomenal musician, passionate supporter of the Quad City Symphony Orchestra. And I want to thank you in advance, because music has a salvific healing power, and I can't think of anywhere I'd rather be to remember that great person than at a QCSO concert.
And we will indeed be honoring her memory in a very special way. So
I'm sure of that. Well, friends, please take part. You can find out ticket information at qcso.org. Remember, Saturday night concerts will be at Adler Theater, and then Sunday, the first Sunday in October, the afternoon concert will be at Centennial Hall on the August.
And if I can intervene, for some strange reason, somehow opening night undersells. You know, it's a mystery, because it's always an exciting event, and maybe there's football games. I don't know what there are, but you know, if there's a concert where, you know, where a packed house would add to the energy, I mean, this is it. And so, for whatever reason, you know, if we can turn that trend around of opening night underselling, I would be a really grateful music director, I'll tell you.
Well, then I'll just remove some mystery, friends. Whether Iowa wins or loses, it's not going to the Rose Bowl. So let's just take that out right now. Get your tickets and go. Maybe people just aren't used to being in that ticket buying mode, but this is a concert not to be missed. And Maestro, thank you so much for your time and being with us for this recording. And we look forward to seeing you live and in person October 4th and 5th. Ladies and gentlemen, please, I hope you'll join me in thanking Maestro Mark Russell Smith and Wells Fargo Advisors for making the series possible. And I look forward to seeing you at the Symphony.
Thanks.